Welcome, everyone, to the Ramana Maharshi International Satsang based here in San Diego, California. And let us give a warm welcome to our special monthly guest every first Sunday of the month from London, the International Ramana Maharshi scholar, Michael James. Michael, welcome. It's good to have you, as always, with us again.
Thank you.
And for those of you watching us on YouTube, and I know countless thousands do, Michael joins us every first Sunday at 10 a.m. California time, and you're invited to join us. If you'd like to join us live and you can ask questions, people live at those times with Michael, you are welcome to do so. Just write to me. I'm Ted at newsguy55@aol.com, and I'll immediately put you on our mailing list. And we also study Ramana's teachings every other Sunday that Michael is not here. And of course, you are also invited to join us at that time as well. So let's get started now with our first question. And Lonnie, I see you just now joined us. This question comes from you. And she's talking about Guru Vachakovai verse 432, which says, is it not because you are yourself awareness that you don't perceive this universe? If you observe awareness steadily, this awareness itself as guru will reveal the truth. Her question to you, Michael, is, she begins by saying, observe awareness steadily. That's the quote. Is this an exact translation from Ramana's original words? Observe implies, for my mind, an object, and I notice that you, Michael, use the words attend to a lot, which has more subtlety and nuance than observe. So is it correct to use this idea interchangeably with observe? And can you clarify the use of observe? This short phrase has been very helpful for meditation for me and for leveraging throughout the day. So I thought I would ask if there is anything that might help with the pointer, Michael.
Right. Okay. In this particular case, the word, no word but means observe is used there in the verse. But Bhagavan did often use words in Tamil that mean observe, look at, or see. See yourself, look at yourself, observe yourself. Normally when we talk about observation or looking or seeing, we're talking about an object. But in this case, when it's seeing yourself or seeing awareness, observing awareness, it's obviously that is not an object. So all these words, they essentially mean attend to. They're just different words that are used because Bhagavan often expresses teachings in poetry. In poetry, different words are used, but they all are metaphorical ways of saying attend to. So yes, we are to observe awareness, but that doesn't mean awareness is an object for us to observe. We observe awareness by attending to our awareness. Means awareness is not something other than ourselves. We ourselves are the awareness that we need to observe or need to attend to. So yes, we can certainly use words like observe in place of attend to, provided we understand that what we're observing or watching or looking at is not an object. It is ourself. What Bhagavan actually says what Bhagavan actually said, his exact words we don't know, because Murugan, what Bhagavan said in prose, Murugan recorded in poetry, and often Murugan packs a lot of ideas into very few words. So the particular phrase that he uses in Tamil is Arivam Kuri Nikkin. That literally means if standing, target, which is awareness. Their target, the word Kuri, this refers to, that is often often in Sanskrit we talk about jnāna-lakshya. Jnāna-lakshya means target of meditation. That means the thing on which we are meditating. So here the word kuri, which means target, it means, in this context, it means the same as the Sanskrit word lakshya. It means the target that we should be attending to. So there's no word here that means observe or attend to, but it's implied. It's all implied in this one word, target. So the target we should have for our meditation is only awareness. And that awareness, of course, is only ourself. It's not something other than ourself. So the meaning of the whole verse is it not because you exist as awareness that you know this world? That is, we know this world only because what we actually are is awareness. Without being awareness, we could not know anything. So it's because we are awareness that we know this world. So if we, as I say, it literally means if we stand having as our target awareness, in other words, if we remain with our attention fixed on this awareness, that awareness itself will will be the jnāna-guru. As the jnāna-guru, it will make us know the reality. So there's a lot of very deep meaning here in this verse. Firstly, Bhagavan is emphasizing that what we actually are is only awareness. The verse begins with the words "Ariveni." That means awareness alone is you. So is it not because you are awareness that you are, is it not because you exist as awareness or remain as awareness that you know this world, that you're aware of this world? Therefore, taking this awareness as your target, if you remain having this awareness as the target of your attention or the target of your observation, I mean, we can put in any word there. Whatever word we use is clearly implied but not stated in the Tamil. If we remain having our attention on that, that awareness itself will be the jnāna-guru. Jnāna-guru means jnana means both knowledge and awareness. So jnāna-guru is the guru who makes us know that that real knowledge, that real awareness. So that awareness itself is the jnāna-guru. That is, Bhagavan often emphasized, though Guru may appear externally in human form, Guru is not a human being. What Guru is that awareness that is ever shining in our heart as our own being. That is what we actually are. So Guru is not something external to ourselves, though because our attention is going outwards, it is necessary for Guru to appear externally in a human form in order to tell us the term within. But that the human form in which Guru appeared was the human form of Bhagavan Ramana. And Bhagavan always emphasized the real Guru is what is shining in your heart as your own being, as I am, as that fundamental awareness I am. So attending to that is listening to the teachings of the Guru. That is, as Bhagavan said, the teaching in words are necessary because our minds are outward going. But the real teaching is not just the words, but the silence. The silence, it means the silence of our own being. So just like we have to pay close attention to the words given by the external form of Guru, because those words are what is directing us to look back within, we have to pay close attention to the silent teaching that is ever shining in our heart as the awareness that we actually are. That is what Bhagavan is implying here. So that awareness itself is the Guru. That's the true form of Guru. So that it's our own awareness, that is the awareness that we actually are, that has appeared externally in the form of Bhagavan in order to tell us to turn within and to know ourselves as we actually are. So this is a very beautiful, it's a very beautifully expressed verse in Tamil. A lot of ideas, a lot of meaning and implication has been packed into the minimum amount of words. But as I say, the word observe is not explicit there, but some word we have to, I mean, it's clearly implied there. Some word, either attention or meditation or observation or watching or looking at or seeing. What it means is our attention should only be on this awareness.
Jacques, you had a comment about this.
It's a question relating to what you said, which I meant to ask several times, or a few times, but when you're talking about okay, the essence obviously be going to the inner voice of the guru, or the guru within Atma-swarupa, well, eventually Atma-swarupa. But what is there any value in terms of insights we might get? Because obviously the insights can only appear to ego, but maybe I'm making a transfer to when I was into Buddhism, and there was a very big emphasis in one part of Buddhism on vipassana, which you've talked about a few times, which is insight, the value of going into meditation, and then there's a big value put on the insights you can get into meditation, which further your knowledge. I know that's completely apart from Vedanta, but I wonder if sometimes when we do go within and we focus on self-attention, we do sometimes get call them conceptual, intellectual insights that come shortly after. Is there any value to that, or are they just well, they're obviously manifestations of the ego, but is there any value to that?
I would express it in somewhat different terms. That is, Bhagavan didn't so much talk about insights as talking about clarity. Bhagavan often talked about clarity. So the more we attend to ourselves, the more we are, so to speak, bathing in clarity. Because what we are attending to is the fundamental awareness of our own being, I am. That is the original light that illumines the mind, which in turn illumines the world. Illumines means it makes it known. So the original light of awareness is this awareness I am. So by attending to that, we are, metaphorically speaking, bathing in that light. So we are bathing in clarity. So the more we attend to ourselves, the more our mind is purified and clarified. So things become, it's not particular concepts or anything, but it's everything just becomes clearer and clearer. This is why there's value in repeatedly studying Bhagavan's teachings. Studying means reading them and thinking about them, or keeping the mind dwelling on that, because the more we go deep in the practice of self-attentiveness, the more clarity we get, and the more depth of meaning and implication we will see in Bhagavan's words. So, for example, a text like Nana or Uludu Napadu, or any of Bhagavan's original writings, we can be studying it for a lifetime, but still getting fresh insight, if you want, on it. We get fresh clarity, more, that is, the underlying implication of Bhagavan's words becomes clearer and clearer to us. So rather than specific clarities, I would specific insights, I would talk of it more as clarity. I think that's more in tune with Bhagavan's way of expressing these things.
I'll just
Is
give
that
one
is that a clear answer?
yes. I'll just give a very short example of maybe more precisely what I mean. You're talking about the texts and going deeper into the subtleties. Yes, I understand that. I mean, for example, one day, maybe at the beginning of my practice, I was walking down the street and I was attending to self. It helps me when I walk, actually, to do self-attention at the same time. And I was noticing people, and I was, my mind, when I came out, it started criticizing in my mind certain of their behaviors. And all of a sudden, I had sort of like the insight, well, to whom is this about? And so, yes, ultimately it's to self, but it's also to ego. And so it was like
Yeah,
a clarification that it was a manifestation of my own ego. It wasn't about them, it was about me.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, these are what we can call them insights, but they're also fresh clarity. We know sometimes these things, like what you've just referred to, we already know. It's our own ego that is judging other people. But sometimes we see that with a fresh clarity. It suddenly strikes us, something that we've known all along. We suddenly know with a fresh clarity. It suddenly hits us in a fresh way.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to get to Sri Ram in a second, but I want to follow up, if I can, Michael, real quickly on what you just said, and I hope I could express this clearly enough. You said several times, maybe 5 or 6, the more we attend to ourselves, the more we can become clearer and clearer in our own understanding of self. For example, as the facilitator here, I receive questions from people on a bunch of topics, which I'm not qualified to answer, but I have a comment sometimes every once in a while. And one of the times, a person, well, actually more than once, would ask me, well, I go inward as Michael and Ramana's teachings tell me to, and I understand the purpose for that, but I can't really fathom what I'm to do there for more than a minute or so. And I remember going through that stage myself until I came to the awareness that why not talk to self, myself, not the dualistic self outside of me, but myself. I mean, we use that phrase from time to time. I'm going to ask myself if I should travel to Spain this year. So in that respect, there's dividends. I become much more comfortable with self. I've become much more comfortable with what you preach a lot. Focus on who you are when you go
Yeah.
into Atma-vichara. Does that make any sense to you, to actually
Yes,
communicate with your own self?
it does in a way. For example, if we pray to Bhagavan, Bhagavan has shown us what we should be praying for if we pray in works like Aksharam, like 108 verses, and other songs of Arunacha Stuti Panchakam. There's so many prayers. To whom are those prayers addressed? Ultimately, is to Bhagavan in our heart. So addressing the prayers to Bhagavan in our heart is itself turning our attention inwards. So it's not exactly self-attention, talking talking to Bhagavan within us. It's not exactly self-attention, but it's moving us in that direction. It's reminding us that Bhagavan, though he appeared externally in human form, and though he appears externally in the form of Arunachala, what he actually is what is always shining in our heart as our own being. So ultimately, all prayers are to be addressed to ourself. To ourself means to our own reality, what
But
we
isn't
what we
Bhagavan in
actually
our
are.
heart? But isn't talking to Bhagavan in our heart referring to self?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
So we
That's
do
exactly
end
what.
up talking to ourself, to not ourself outside
Yes.
self.
But the talking is not self-attention, but we are moving our attention in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
That's,
not an external God we are referring to. It's the God who is always shining in our heart.
yeah. Well, that phrase I'll remember, talking to self is not necessarily self-attention. That's important. That's a key phrase.
That is, talking is an activity. It's a mental activity. We are formulating words. So
Yeah.
that's a mental activity. Self-attention is not an activity. It is a
Yeah.
state of being.
And of course, I mean silent talking. I don't sit here
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
out.
and yeah. So you're mentally talking to yourself.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you for that. We've got
Yes.
a couple of questions on this same topic. Leonie, I'll get to you after we go to Sri Ram.
Okay. Michael, extremely grateful for your wisdom and love. Question about the self-inquiry. You talk about targeting the guru, observing the guru. It's implied in Muruganar's teaching. So for me, the problem is when I start the process, it feels like I'm after the self, which is within me, and maybe it's in the form of an ego in the beginning. And then I have a feeling that I'm observing myself. So there's a sense of duality. And then
How can there be a sense of duality if you're observing yourself? Because the
there's a,
I who's observing and the self who's being observed, are they two different selves?
yeah, but I feel like when I am going inside, somebody's going inside to look for something, like in a dark room looking for a light. And then it's like a ping pong. I come back but at times I get absorbed in that and I lose the duality. Like you said, self-awareness, self-attention, non-dual state. It's a non-activity. It's just being in that state.
Yeah.
It's not an observation. So how to avoid this ping-ponging, like coming back from it?
It's a matter of understanding. We are not looking for anything. We are looking at what is ever existing and ever shining as our own being. So we're not looking for some unknown thing. We are observing or attending to that which is ever known. But though we always know I am, the problem is at present, we instead of knowing just I am, we know I am mixed with upadhis, mixed with adjuncts, as I am Sri Ram, I am Michael. So by attending to ourself alone, our being alone, that I am alone, we are slowly thereby separating ourselves from these adjuncts with which we have now mixed and conflated ourselves. So we're not looking for something, we're just holding on to that self-attentiveness. We are, as Bhagavan put it in Nana, we are keeping our mind on ourselves. By keeping our mind on ourselves, we thereby automatically separate ourselves from everything else. Because all these adjuncts, this body and mind this person we take ourselves to be, these are not holding on to us. We are holding on to them. So if instead of holding on to these adjuncts, if we hold on to ourselves, that means if we attend only to our own being, they will automatically drop off because they can't hold on to us. It's we holding on to them. So when we hold on to ourselves, we are automatically letting go of them. To the extent to which we let go of them, that means we draw our attention from them, they drop off. So it's a very, very simple thing of being self-attentive. Even to say attending to ourselves, attending sounds like an action, but we are being self-attentive. That is we are just being what we actually are. So it's very important to understand that this practice is not a doing, but a being.
That's very beautiful, Michael. And just one last thing. If other things impinge on you, thoughts of going to here and there, like Ted was saying, you just brush them off like mosquitoes.
Don't brush them off. Investigate to whom they have appeared. That means turn your attention away from them. If you're brushing them off, you're attending to them. Bhagavan says it ends the 6th verse of Arunach Ashtakam by saying, Nindrida Sendrida Ninevida Vindre. Let them cease or let them go on. They are not other than you. There refers to, in the previous sentence, he explains how the whole world is just a projection of our own thoughts. So let this world and all the thoughts that it is composed of, let them appear, let them not appear. They're not other than you. Why he says that is, we shouldn't be concerned about whatever appears. In the 6th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Etene enangal erinam enna. That means, however many thoughts rise, so what? So he's indicating there we shouldn't be concerned about thoughts. Then he says in the next sentence, as and when each thought arises, it's necessary to investigate to whom it has risen. So investigating to whom means turning our attention away from the thought towards ourselves. So we're not brushing off the thought, we're not rejecting the thought, we are just turning our attention to ourselves. By turning our attention to ourselves, we are thereby withdrawing our attention from the thought, and thereby effectively we're rejecting it. But we're not trying to reject it, we're just trying to attend to the one to whom all these things appear.
And this is all without any words. And this is all without any words.
Without words. The words are just pointers.
Okay, we ought to get to Liane before we move to the second question. Thank you, Sri Ram. Liane.
Yeah, just now came something up again. I was moving a little bit with the group here, and there's the woman, and turns out that there is also, in a sense, black magic in play. I don't know for sure if I'm targeted now or not. And what is this all about then?
Things like black magic, these all, ultimately this whole world is a dream. If we believe in black magic, if we believe in dark forces, all these things will seem very real to us. But ultimately nothing is real. The only thing that is real is our own being.
So in fact, if I'm not afraid, that I'm being sent bad thoughts, from a seemingly other form, nothing happens, no?
Nothing can happen that is not destined to happen. And whatever is destined to happen is what is allotted to us by Bhagavan. They're all fruits of our past karmas that have been allotted to us by Bhagavan, but he doesn't allot the fruits randomly. He selects which fruits will be most conducive to our spiritual advancement. So whatever we are given to experience in this life, any kind of experience, it's all for our own spiritual benefit. And how should we respond to it? To whom does it all appear? So if you experience what seem to be the effects of black magic, to whom do those effects appear?
Yeah, I know.
So rather than looking for the cause of what has appeared, we should be looking for the one to whom it has appeared. Not even looking for, because we already know. To whom it appears to me. So investigating to whom means turning our attention back to ourselves, the one to whom all these things appear. So we shouldn't be concerned about anything. The only thing we should be concerned about is knowing and being what we actually are. And to know and be what we actually are, all we need to do is to turn our attention back to ourselves, thereby withdrawing it from all other things. Even turning our attention away from all other things, as some people try to do, that is not sufficient. We need to attend to ourselves. If we attend to ourselves, we thereby withdraw our attention from all other things.
Ready for the next question?
Yes?
Thanks, Liane. I'll point out, this is a long question, so pay attention, listen carefully to get it all, and it has several nuances to it. It's from Stephen. I don't know if Stephen's here or not, but anyway, I have a question for Michael, which comes from a paragraph in The Path of Sri Ramana, Appendix 2, page 320 or 313. It reads, as happiness in sleep is experienced without any external objects, cannot we infer that happiness is inherent to ourself? Still, it is just an iota of the eternal happiness that is the essence and nature of ourself. Our nature is happiness, so no external objects, including the body and mind, are required to experience happiness. Even so, the happiness enjoyed in sleep is limited. Bhagavan used to compare happiness derived from sleep to the sparse moonlight filtering through the tree leaves on the ground, and the Yani's Turiya happiness to the full moonlight falling unimpeded on the open ground. Even though happiness is sleep is very minimal, is not this experience very dear to everyone? Given that who would not want the eternal perfect happiness of the Turiya state? My understanding of Michael, he goes on, is that there is no difference between the state of deep sleep and that of self-realization. Nothing is added to it by way of awareness of it, changing the state at all. For my part, I do not want to think that the sleep state, which to me is not so great, is equal to full freedom. Here it is said to be just an iota of the eternal happiness, and like sparse moonlight again filtering through the tree leaves as opposed to full moonlight. So is our goal to attain the sleep state while waking, or rather to experience the greater eternal happiness to which sleep is only a shadow? While we are at it, Michael, how does double awareness relate to this? That is, when one is awake and aware while in the dreaming state. Does this give an insight into self-realization? Is that something like what the enlightened state might be? Lastly, in the following chapter called Questions and Answers, it is not said who gave the answers. It looks like Sadhu Om put together teachings from Bhagavan in paragraph form, but can we trust this? It does not read like Bhagavan spoke, in my opinion. Michael.
Okay. Dealing with the first question first. Different explanations are given from different perspectives. Yes, I often say there is no difference between the state of deep sleep and the state, I don't generally use the term self-realization, and our real state. That is the state of what remains in sleep is our real state. But that is the deepest truth. But that is not how it seems to be from the perspective of ego in waking and dream. One obvious difference between sleep and our real state is that sleep is temporary. It comes and goes, whereas our real state is eternal. But we need to remember this difference exists only from the perspective of ego in waking and dream. That is, as ego, we experience ourselves as having come out of sleep. So from our perspective, sleep seems to be a temporary state. It comes and it goes. So that is, most explanations are given from to suit the perspective of ourself as ego in waking and dream. So how it's been expressed by Sadhu Om in this paragraph, is how Bhagavan also often used to explain these things. But Bhagavan also gave deeper explanations, saying actually in sleep, the happiness that is experienced in sleep, who is experiencing that happiness? It is not ego, because ego doesn't exist in sleep. So what experiences that happiness can only be our real nature. Our real nature is itself infinite happiness, so the happiness in sleep cannot be anything but infinite. But that's not how it appears from the perspective of ourself as ego in waking and dream. From the perspective of ego, what we actually experienced in sleep is covered by a veil, so to speak, a veil of self-ignorance. That is, what we experienced in deep sleep is what we actually are. But what we actually are in deep sleep is only what we actually are. It wasn't ego. So when we rise as ego in waking and dream, we take ourselves to be a person. So as this ego, we were not present in sleep to experience that. But though we were not present as ego, we were present as the fundamental awareness of our own being, I am. So that any explanation we give, like this explanation that as Sadhu Om has given in this paragraph, and as I say, as Bhagavan also often gave it, this sort of explanation, this is the explanation that will satisfy most people. And a deeper explanation, the reason Bhagavan often didn't give a deeper explanation, the reason Sadhu Om didn't give a deeper explanation in this particular context is, as Bhagavan said, the teaching has to be according to the taught. So when just to give an example to illustrate this, when we at school, when we start learning physics, we don't learn about quantum mechanics. We don't learn about Einstein's theory of relativity. We start off by learning Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics, for several hundred years, Newtonian physics seemed to be the final answer. It seemed to satisfy all the data that was available. But when Einstein came along with his theory of relativity, and later when this quantum mechanics came along, it became clear that though Newtonian physics works very well at a grosser level, it doesn't, when we go down to subtler level, it doesn't all hold together. But we don't, for that reason, start teaching children in school. You don't start with quantum mechanics or with Einstein's theory of relativity. You start with Newtonian physics. If you've understood Newtonian physics, then you'll be able to understand. Then when you go further into it, you'll be able to understand the limitations in Newtonian physics, and you'll be able to see where Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum mechanics fits in, and why they become necessary because of more data. Exactly the same with Bhagavan's teachings. Bhagavan often gives more superficial explanations at first, because only those more superficial explanations will satisfy us at first. But if we go deeper into this subject, we begin to see that these explanations don't entirely hold together. Because if it is, yes, the happiness enjoyed in sleep is limited from the perspective of ego in waking and dream, because as ego, we seem to have come out of sleep. And as ego, we didn't actually experience that happiness. What experienced the happiness in sleep is what we actually are, was experiencing itself as it actually is, as it's happening eternally. So from what seems true from a perspective of ego in waking and dream is not actually as it is. So Bhagavan made it very clear that in sleep, what remains in sleep is what we actually are. ego is not present in sleep. He makes it very clear in so many places. For example, in verse 21, I think it is, of Upadesha Undiyar, he talks about nanatra tukatam. Bhagavan made it clear that in sleep, ego doesn't exist. In the absence of ego, all limitations cease to it. That is, without ego, there are no limitations. Limitations exist only in the perspective of ego. Since ego is absent in sleep, oh yes, I was referring to verse 21 of Upadesha Undiyar, in which Bhagavan says, nanatra tukatam, in sleep, which is devoid of I. I is there referring to ego. It's not referring to what we actually are, because that verse is about what is the real meaning of the word I. But what the word I actually refers to is that infinite awareness that we actually are. So in sleep, there's no ego. He also says the same in the first sentence of Nana, the first sentence of the first paragraph. He says, manamatra nidraya, in sleep which is devoid of mind. Devoid of mind means devoid of ego, because ego is the root of the mind. So there's no ego in sleep. Since ego is absent, there can be no limitations. So in sleep, there are no limitations at all. But from the perspective of ego in waking and dream, sleep seems to be limited. I slept only for 6 hours. It was limited. I fell asleep and then now I've woken up. So sleep seems to be limited in time. And what I experienced in sleep, it may have been a very pleasant state. I was free of trouble, but I wasn't infinitely happy. No, certainly not. That's how it appears from our perspective as ego in waking and dream. Because when we rise as ego, we cover ourselves with a veil of self-ignorance by taking ourselves to be something other than what we actually are. So we, as ego, what existed in sleep was only infinite happiness. But from the perspective of ego and waking and dream, we remember it was a very pleasant state, but we don't remember it as the infinite happiness that it actually was. Because we, as ego, were not present there. How then we remember being happy in sleep? Because the reality of ego is the pure awareness I am. That is our being. That is the continuity through all the three states. So the same I that is now awake was previously dreaming or sleeping. So it's the same I but undergoes these, but that though it's the same I, the being is the same, the I takes on a different form, so to speak, in waking and dream by wrongly identifying itself as I am this body. So as ego, our perspective is always distorted. So generally, when talking about sleep, it's often this type of explanation is given because this is given from the distorted perspective of ego. This is a concession to the distorted perspective of ego. But if we think about it more deeply, how can there be any limitations in the absence of ego? All limitations appear only in the view of ego. But in some sastras, for example, it said, ego remains in seed form in sleep. Even Bhagavan sometimes gave such explanations. But that's fine. That satisfies most people. But if we think of it more deeply, what is this ego? This ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourself. Awareness of ourself as I am this body, I am this person. There's no such awareness in sleep. So ego doesn't actually exist in sleep, as Bhagavan also on many occasions made very clear. So, but people often, if you tell people there's no ego at all in sleep, they're not satisfied. No, ego existed in the form of the karana sarira, the causal body, of the anandamaya kosha. It wasn't completely absent. Such explanations most people are not satisfied unless they're given such explanation. Because if ego is completely non-existent in sleep, how does it come out of sleep again? There's so many questions they'll ask, they won't be satisfied. But the deeper truth is, this ego we're talking about doesn't exist even now. It seems to exist, but if we investigate it, we'll find that it never actually existed at all. So since ego doesn't actually exist, even when it seems to exist, why should we want to say that it actually exists in sleep when it doesn't even seem to exist? So it depends how deeply we are going into these teachings. If we go into the teachings more deeply, the more superficial explanations will not satisfy us. If we haven't gone into the teachings more deeply, the deeper teachings will not satisfy us. So Bhagavan gave different explanations, different levels of explanation according to the context, according to whom he was talking to. Many, particularly in dialogues, when people were asking Bhagavan questions, he often he often expressed things in a very diluted way rather than giving his pure teaching, because his pure teachings wouldn't have been understood by those people. There's no use giving teachings that people cannot understand, or even if they can understand, won't be willing to accept. So you have to give teaching, as Bhagavan said, has to be according to the taught. So yes, what Sadhu Om says here does seem to contradict what I often say, but there's actually no difference at all between sleep and our real state. But Sadhu Om also said that, Bhagavan also said that, depending on the context, depending on who is being spoken to. So we need to understand, ultimately, all explanations are false, because what we are trying to explain itself is false. It has none of these things have any reality whatsoever. What is real is only I am. As Bhagavan says in Nana, Yathatamai Ulladu Atma-swarupam Andre. What actually exists is only Atma-swarupa. Atma-swarupa means ourself as we actually are. So all explanations, we're trying to explain what is unreal, what doesn't actually exist, what merely seems to exist. So explanations are useful because they point us in the right direction, but different levels of explanation, we'll encounter different levels of explanation in Bhagavan's teachings. So what Bhagavan says in one place may seem to contradict what he said in another place, but that is because different explanations are addressed to different audiences. There's a verse in Uladu Napadu Anubandham where Bhagavan says, verse 33, I think it is, in which Bhagavan says, to say that for Vijnani, Sanchita and Agamya and Sanchita do not adhere to the Jnani, but that Prarabdha does remain, is an answer given to the questions of others. That means it's a superficial answer given to satisfy those who cannot understand that Vijnani, though Vijnani appears in human form, Vijnani is not that human form. So, like that, many of Bhagavan's answers were answers given to the questions of others. This also, what Sadhu Om wrote in that particular place, he's addressing people at a certain level according to their level of understanding. So one thing I found when I was with Sadhu Om, he would give me explanations, but for some time would satisfy me. But later on, I would begin to see that the explanations didn't really hold. I began to see the explanations were not watertight explanations. So when I started questioning more deeply, then he gave me deeper explanations. But then sometimes, after he'd given me a deeper explanation, and I was satisfied with that deeper explanation, I'd hear him talking to others, and he would give a more superficial explanation. So afterwards, I would ask him, why did you answer in that way? Why didn't you tell them like you told me? He said, if I'd told them like that, they wouldn't have been satisfied. I have to give an answer that is satisfying, that is useful for them at the level they're at. If they inquire more deeply, like you inquired more deeply, then the deeper teaching is given. So we need to understand there are different levels of teaching. Different levels of teachings are appropriate for us at different stages of our spiritual development. So we need to think about all these things and understand from what perspective is one explanation true, and from what perspective is another explanation true, which is a more superficial explanation, which is a deeper explanation. These things will become clear to us as we go deeper and deeper in the practice. Because as we go deeper in the practice, we'll understand the teachings more deeply, and then we'll be able to grasp the deeper teachings, and we'll understand why it was necessary earlier to be given more superficial teachings. Like who is it? Stephen, who asked this question, says, "For my part, I do not want to think that sleep state, which to me is not so great, is equal to full freedom." There he says, which to me is not so great. Yes, from the perspective of ego, the me who is talking, sleep doesn't appear so great. But because we are not, as ego in waking and dream, we are not seeing sleep as it actually is. We have a vague impression that we existed in sleep, and we were aware of our existence in sleep, and we were happy. There was nothing in sleep that troubled us. That much we are able to see. But we are not, if we were able to experience what we experienced in sleep, that itself is jnana, and the ego will thereby be destroyed. Because we now don't know ourselves as we actually are here and now, we don't know ourselves as we actually were in sleep. So it's our present ignorance in the form of ego that is veiling what we actually experienced in sleep. So that is why sleep doesn't appear so great from the perspective of ego. But actually what sleep is really great, but we weren't there to experience, we as ego were not there to experience it. So since we didn't experience it, since we as ego didn't experience it, we rise again as ego. Ego isn't destroyed. If we as ego experience that, then ego is destroyed. Because what actually exists and shines in sleep is pure awareness, which is infinite being, infinite awareness, infinite happiness, infinite love. But it doesn't look like that from our perspective as ego in waking and dream. So that's why Bhagavan gave that analogy, that the happiness of sleep is just like the sparse moonlight filtering through the tree leaves, as opposed to the full moonlight in the open. If we want to, what are the tree leaves through which the moonlight is being filtered? The tree leaves are ego in waking and dream, looking at sleep from we're looking at sleep through the filter of ego. So it's ego that is acting as a tree leaves that make sleep, the happiness of sleep, appear to be something less than the infinite happiness that it actually is. I don't know whether for how many people this answer is clear, but I hope at least some people are able to understand what I've been trying to say here. It then goes on to say, while we're at it, how does double awareness relate to this? That is, when one is awake and aware while in the dreaming state. Does this give an insight into self-realization? Is that something like what enlightened state is? No, the answer is, when we say when one is awake and aware while in dreaming state, while we are dreaming, we are always aware. We couldn't be dreaming if we were not aware of the dream. So we are aware. And in dream, we always seem to be awake. But sometimes in dream, we get an idea, oh, this is just a dream. So I think that is what people call lucid dreaming. But it's actually just we are dreaming, but we are dreaming that we are dreaming. I mean, it's just an idea that we have in dream, but that is that we are recognizing that it's a dream. But still, even when the thought occurs to us, this is just a dream. Sometimes we may be experiencing something interesting in a dream, and we may suddenly get a fear that we're going to wake up, so we want to continue the dream. So, but all this is all part of the dream. So it's not a double awareness. It's just we are reflecting on our experiencing and interpreting our experience, but normally seems to be waking state. Sometimes we suddenly begin to consider, oh, this is perhaps just a dream. Yes, it's just a dream. Sometimes we see things in dream but don't make sense. We may walk up a hill, and at the top of the hill we see we're on the beach. So how do we walk up the hill and come to the beach? It doesn't make sense in the waking state. So we experience that and we think, oh, this can't be so. This must be just a dream. But this is all just like in the waking state, we're constantly interpreting our experience. In dream, we're also constantly interpreting our experience. Just like in dream, we sometimes have reason to doubt whether we have reason to suspect that what we're experiencing is just a dream. Even in the waking state, we have the same reason. So this isn't double awareness. This is just how we interpret what we are currently experiencing. But it's all a dream. Even, as Bhagavan said, even this waking state is just a dream. And this doesn't in any way give an insight into self-realization. It's not what the enlightened state is. In the enlightened state, there is only light. Light means the light of pure awareness, nothing else. But that is, as Bhagavan expressed in so many verses in Aksharam-laya and Aranachapachanjaratnam, he talks about Sakalongam and Virangam. That is, Arunachal is the bright sun of pure awareness that swallows everything. That is, when we know ourselves as we actually are, in that infinite clarity of pure awareness, everything will be swallowed. So there's nothing that we experience in waking and dream that can give us any inkling into what the state of, what our real state actually is. Because when we experience our real state, everything is consumed. The whole appearance of three states, waking, dream, and sleep, that is all consumed. And then he asked one more question. Lastly, in the following chapter, that means the subsequent chapter. It's not actually a chapter, it's an appendix. That is, this passage he quoted was from an appendix about waking, dream, and sleep, if I remember correctly. About the three states, analysis of the three states. The next appendix is called Questions and Answers. Those are questions that Sadhu Om was asked and answers that he gave. It's not specified there, but it's expected that people understand that from the context, because if you don't, in a book, if something is not attributed to anyone else, you have to assume it's the author who's written it. So the questions were not, well, a lot of they were questions and answers that various people recorded. Either some of them were answers Sadhu Om may have given in reply to letters. So the question was, there was a written record of the question, a written record of the answer, or some things that he answered orally and someone noted down the question and the answer. So he put those together, edited them into a series of questions and answers. So it's all Sadhu Om. So I hope that answers all of Stephen's questions.
Yeah, that was a question I asked, I think about a month ago, and I didn't realize it was my question for about 10 minutes in there. So
you ask all these questions. You sent these in, right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
It was last month, I think, you had
Yeah.
sent it, and I didn't have time to reply to it last month, but I thought it's an important question, so I wanted to answer it this time.
No, I think you answered it. I just don't think I'm ever going to get to the point where I'm going to equate a sleeping dream with what you're calling the waking dream. In other words, I could dream at night that I flew to Florida, but if I actually get the ticket and go to the airport and get on the plane and get to Florida, I don't think I'm ever going to equate those two. I would have to be a lunatic to think that waking, actually being in Florida is no different than sleeping and dreaming. I can't accept that.
Okay, consider it from a different point of view. Is there anything that you experience in the waking state that you could not experience in a dream?
Well, just, as people always say, that the consistency, the linearity of it. If I go to the airport, I don't end up at the beach and I don't end up on the moon. And
Yes,
there's something very convincing about the waking state.
but remember, the same is the case with some dreams. Not all dreams are inconsistent. Some dreams are full of inconsistencies. Bhagavan has explained that also, where we get dreams where one moment we're in Tiruvannamalai, and the next moment we're in New York or something, or we're talking to someone, and that person, it may be a friend of ours, and suddenly that person becomes our father who had passed away 30 years ago. So something where things are very fluid. There seems to be no solidity to a dream. Bhagavan explained that is according to the degree of attachment to the body. So in some dreams, we only have a slight attachment to the body. So those dreams are very unstable dreams. But we sometimes have dreams that are just as convincing as this waking state. For example, sometimes, most people have experienced this, sometimes we wake up in the morning and we begin to go about our usual tasks. We may brush our teeth, wash our face. We're rushing to get to work, so we're hurrying. And we're just going outside the door, getting into the car or something, and we wake up a second time. So what we had experienced before was a dream that we woke from one dream into another dream before waking into this so-called waking state. So there are many dreams that are just as convincing as this waking state.
I've had dreams that were more convincing than the waking state.
Yes. And sometimes we can discuss these things with people. I've had dreams where, because I often am discussing these things with people or talking about things, I've had dreams where I'm discussing with people. I said, supposing this was a dream, when it was actually a dream, I'm trying to explain to them the lack of difference between waking and dream. And to me, I seem to be in the waking state. So I say, suppose, how can you be sure that this is not a dream? I put that question to them in a dream because it seems so real at that time. So
yeah, there are some dreams that make this reality a complete. I was convinced for a long time that these dreams, and I guess I consider them more visions. I used a different word, but they were actually 100 times more true and more real. And I was convinced that was the actual reality, and that there was a point in life where I thought that the waking state was actually a dream compared to when I went to sleep and had I called it a waking dream. But I had experiences that I thought they were so real and so true that
exactly,
our reality paled by comparison. It didn't feel at all real.
Yeah. And also another thing that we can suppose, we've all had experiences sometimes, supposing we are really, really tired, really sleepy, but we're trying to keep awake. Maybe we're returning home, so we need to keep awake. We're walking along the road or something. Even while walking, we may be falling asleep. Or sometimes, I mean, this is something I've experienced sometimes. Sometimes people who drink, they get into a state which is less real. I mean, the state becomes as unstable as a very unstable dream. So that is because we're losing our hold on the body that we're now identifying with. So everything becomes very dreamlike, very unstable, very very fluid, so to speak. So if we think about it deeply, there's really that we may be able to point out qualitative differences between some dreams and some periods of waking, but these are qualitative differences. They're not substantive differences. There's no substantive difference between waking and dream.
So you would say that even the most realistic, I don't mean to use the word real, even the most convincing dream where you're flying around, you feel like you're having a real, it feels more real than our ordinary reality. That's just as much of a dream, even though it feels truer by any standard. It's just as much of a dream as the others.
Yeah. Sometimes when we're flying in a dream, for example, we wonder how I never noticed before, but I'm able to fly like this. It's actually so easy to fly.
Right.
So all these, it's all, as a general rule, whatever we are currently experiencing seems to us to be real. The reason it seems to us to be real is because what is actually real is only ourself. Because we now experience ourselves as a body, because we are real, this body seems to be real. And because this body is part of the world, the whole world seems to be real. So as long as we're dreaming, the dream seems to be real. Even if we notice things that would not be possible in the waking state, we're still convinced by it. It's so real. But it can't be otherwise, because we are experiencing this body as I. By experiencing this body as I, we're experiencing the body as real. And therefore the world in which that body is a part also seems to be real. That is why a dream that seems so real, so long as we're dreaming, as soon as we wake up, we are immediately able to recognize, oh, that was just a dream. It wasn't real. It was just a dream. Why is that? Because so long as we were identified with that dream body, the dream seemed to be real. As soon as our identification with that dream body is severed, and our identification switches to this body, we're immediately able to recognize that it was unreal.
Well,
Stephen, does that do it?
Well, I'm not sure what's real right now. I'd like to think that I'd like to think that I came close. I'd like to think that one of those, dreams were, I felt that I was closer to reality than ever. It was capital R, capital T, true. I was meeting with sages under the ocean. I was having archetypal experiences that were more convincing than anything you could have in daily reality. So I'm not averse to the idea that, yes, I felt I had gotten to a deeper reality. And now you're really saying that's kind of just a more convincing dream.
Yes. Because you have stronger attachment to that state, because it's such an appealing state, so you have strong attachment to it.
Yeah.
Your attachment is what gives it reality.
Oh, I'm blown away by that, because I was so convinced that I just had to try to get back there to the real. I had healings that I was healed in the morning when I woke up, when the wise man touched me, and I woke up and I was healed. It was like I was convinced that was a deeper reality.
Yeah.
Or I was closer and closer, and maybe it wasn't the ultimate reality, but it was closer than anything in my daily life. And now, all right, I guess it all was, like you said, I was very attached to that level of archetypal, truths. But
Yeah.
it's no more real than my nighttime dream, no more real than my daytime
Yes,
dream. Oh
exactly.
God. I got my money's worth for this one. Thank you.
Okay, there are a couple of nice things to illustrate this. There's a very well-known story, I think it's a Zen story or a Taoist story, of a Chinese sage who dreamt that he was a butterfly. And when he woke up from a dream, he would question, am I a butterfly dreaming that I'm a sage, or am I a sage who was dreaming I was a butterfly? That's a very well-known story. There's another nice story.
Yes.
I don't know whether it occurs in Yoga Vashistam or in one of the Puranas, but there's a story about Janaka. Janaka was a king. He was a very good king. He was actually a jnani. But anyway, in this story, it was before he attained jnana. He had a dream one night that he was woken up by his guards, and the guards said, the enemy are attacking. A neighboring king had come to attack their kingdom. So he got up and he summoned his commander-in-chief. He got the army together and they went out to face the enemy. And there was a very fierce battle, and he was defeated in the battle. And in the end, he was dragged before the conquering king, and the conquering king said, I should really execute you now. But because I have respect for you as a former king, I will let you go. But I exile you, go out of this kingdom and never come back again. So he was wandering, trying to get out of the kingdom. And on the way, he was very tired, he was very thirsty, very hungry. But when he begged at the doors of his loyal subjects, they were so afraid of this new king, they refused even to give him a drop of water. So eventually he went beyond the border of his kingdom to a neighboring kingdom. And there was he came to a temple or somewhere where food was being distributed to poor people. So he stood in the queue to get some morsel of food. And finally, when he was the last person in the queue, so finally when he got to the place where the food was being distributed, the pot was nearly empty. There was just a little bit of gruel remaining in the bottom. So they gave him a bowl and poured that gruel into the bowl. And he was just about to drink that gruel when a crow came and knocked it out of his hand. And he fell down completely exhausted. And at that moment, he woke up. But from then on, that dream had such an impact upon him. He started to think, is this real or was that real? When his servants came to him early in the morning to tell him it's time to get up, he said, is this true or is that true? The servants didn't understand, so they went and reported to the minister. The king's behaving very strangely today. He's saying, was that true or is this true? So the ministers came and they talked to him, and he continued just saying, was that true or is this true? So the ministers then went to his wife and said, something seems to have happened to the old man. You better go and find out what's wrong with him. So the wife goes, and she gets the same response. So she calls the doctors, and the doctors go and they get the same response. And then there's in the court, people are coming with so many petitions and things, but he's just sitting there saying, is this true? Is that true? So at that time, one sage, I don't know whether it was Vashishta or some other sage, was passing by. He came there to visit the king. So they knowing that he was a great sage, the people let him in, and they said, the king seems to have gone mad. He's just saying, is this true? Is that true? So the sage knew what he was talking. He was the only one who understood what the problem was. So he asked the king, what you were experiencing then, are you experiencing it now? The king said no. Then that was not true. What you're experiencing now, were you experiencing then? No. So that was not real. What was the one thing that was common in that experience and this experience, you alone were the one common factor. So you alone are real.
That's deep as to what that you is.
Yeah, well, superficially, the you who experiences all this is ego, but underlying the ego is the underlying reality, the pure I. That is, ego is the adjunct conflated I. Remove the adjuncts, and what remains is the pure I. They're not two eyes; it's only one eye. But now we seem to be, as ego, we seem to be limited as a person. But what we actually are is unlimited.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you for. I think that was. I hope it helped a lot of people other than me, because I feel a little selfish about it. But I really thank you for.
Yeah, it
for
was.
answering that,
Yes, it was a useful question, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
actually,
good.
this last part too is a variation on a theme that I've experienced, such as I'm looking at this screen now and I'm talking to Michael, and my question in my mind is Michael a character in my dream right now? Or am I a character in Michael's dream right now? I mean, these things can haunt you after a while.
The dreamer is the one who is seeing the dream.
That's the
So
dreamer.
that's a dreamer. So you know the answer. Who is
Yeah.
seeing all this?
The dream. Yeah, the dreamer.
The dreamer, yes. The one
Yeah.
who is seeing all this is the dreamer.
Great.
But the dreamer is not Ted.
Right, I
The
know.
dreamer is dreaming himself as I am Ted. Ted is as much a part of the dream as Michael.
So is the dream a projection of self?
No, not a projection of self. It's a projection of the dreamer.
Picture of a dreamer.
The
Okay.
dreamer is ego.
Yeah. All of this can be very complicated and
Yeah.
really.
That is the one who projects the dream is the one who sees the dream, the one who experiences the dream.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. We have a couple people in the wings who have been having their hands up. Bruce, I see you took your hand down. Do you want to ask your question or make your comment still?
Yeah, maybe Michael could talk about, for example, fruits of karma versus spiritual maturity, the fruit of spiritual maturity. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that. The difference.
Spiritual maturity, it comes in the form of mental purification of mind. And with purification is clarity. So the fruit of spiritual endeavor is clarity. The fruit of action is whatever we are given to experience.
Right, but then the relationship between the two.
That is the doer
Because
of the doer of the action and the experience of the fruit of the action is ego.
Yeah,
Ego
that's right.
is a false awareness of ourself, an awareness of ourself as I am Bruce, I am Michael, I'm Ted, I'm whoever.
Right, but the prarabdha
as we go,
the fruit.
if we are practicing, if we following a spiritual path, we are gaining more and more clarity. That clarity now, it's not sufficient to completely dissolve this false identification, but we are moving to that. That is, as we go deeper in the spiritual path, the clarity increases. And when we experience that clarity in all its fullness, that is what consumes ego and consumes the doer of action and the experience of the fruit, that is, because ego is the doer and the experiencer. So the clarity is the clarity that we begin to experience, to the extent to which we go deep in this practice of self-investigation, that clarity is what in its fullest form will swallow us entirely. And in swallowing us, it will swallow everything. That's what Bhagavan refers to in Aksharamlai when he says Sakalam and Birangam in verse 27 of Aksharamlai, son of bright rays, swallowing everything. And also in the
Right.
first verse of Arunachal Pancharatnam. So
But
that
also,
clarity is what we are seeking.
right. So, but the when it's referred to the fruit of prarabdha, for example, that it's
Prarabdha
organized. Let me just talk for a second.
Yeah.
The fruit of prarabdha is organized by the guru for our benefit. Okay, so it's intended as a profit for the maturation of the fruit of the spiritual fruit of the self. So that there is a link in that the prarabdha, in its purest sense, because it's directed to us by the creator, that it's for our benefit. So, and it's for our spiritual benefit.
Yes.
So that's what I just wanted to.
Yes.
Is that correct?
It is correct, but the prarabdha itself cannot give the spiritual benefit. It gives the conditions that will be conducive to
Right,
spiritual
exactly.
development.
Yeah, I get that exactly. Yeah.
Because
otherwise it's just experience. It's drooling out experiences.
Yeah.
And they have if there's no self that is, turning inward to benefit from that, then it's just it's a pointless endeavor.
Well, it has its effect, but it's a very, very slow process. That's why we've undergone billions of lifetimes to get to where we are now. And if we want to put an end to it, we need to start practicing turning within, because that's the only way to bring an end to all of this.
That's right. Thank you.
Right.
You mean we could have billions of lifetimes still to come?
It's up to us. The choice is ours. We are always free to turn within. Yeah. Why we are not turning within, or why we're not turning within deeply enough? Because we don't yet have sufficient love. So it's all ultimately bondage and liberation. It's our choice. We're in bondage because we choose to be in bondage. We choose to be attached to all these things.
That's a haunting thought. Why wouldn't more people choose to follow this path?
This is Maya, and Maya is nothing but our own mind, our own likes and dislikes and desires and attachments. We wrongly think that we're going to get happiness if we buy that bigger car or have a nicer house or get a better job, or we're always looking for that happiness outside ourselves. And we've been disappointed for billions of lifetimes, but we're still foolishly looking outside.
Well, for the new people here, that should be pretty encouraging, because I'm looking at a couple right now. It's a big grind going up this hill of Advaita, Vedanta, self-inquiry, finding the answer. Who am I?
Yes.
Let's go on. Sri Ram, we have time for another couple of questions, one from you and one from Jacques, okay?
Michael, you mentioned something that maybe you did not mean to, or maybe you wanted to give a concession to the ego, that you said, who is enjoying the joy, the bliss of deep sleep? Ego is not there. It's only the self is there. So you don't mean to say that the self itself is enjoying the joy of its own bliss, because the self is supposed to be non-doer. The Satchitananda are attributes, but they are not. The self is not.
That happiness is its very being. It doesn't do anything to enjoy it. It just, that is Satchit Ananda. That Ananda is nothing but Sat. It's nothing but Chit. That is Satchit Ananda, not three things. They're three ideas that point to the same fundamental reality.
Yes, sir.
So that is what we actually are. Atma-swarupa
So it is not
enjoys
experiencing anything. It's
Yeah.
just enjoying itself. So
we use the word experiencing, but it's not experiencing in the sense of there's no triputi there.
yeah,
Experiencer, thing experienced, and the means of
Okay.
experiencing. There's no such
Yes, sir.
thing. There's just
yes, sir.
that is happiness is our very being.
Absolutely beautiful. The second thing I just want you just mentioned that Maya is mind, and Maya is same as ego, is same as ignorance,
Yes,
is
yes.
same as the false, the phantom, or the
Exactly.
pishacha. The pishacha you thought.
Exactly,
Bhagavan
exactly,
called it.
exactly.
Okay, they're just different words for the same thing.
Yes.
And what you have intrigued me before. You said that even in a dream, because you have an identification with the dream body and dream triputi, it can lend itself to in self-inquiry practice even in a dream.
Yes, in
Is
the
this
dream we can investigate ourselves. If we habituate ourselves to being self-attentive in the waking state, that will continue in dream also.
Okay.
And if we attend to ourselves a little bit more deeply in dream, we'll wake up, because dreams generally are not as stable as waking. So it's very just a relatively not such a deep self-attentiveness is enough to dissolve the dream. But it
Yes.
doesn't dissolve the underlying, what underlies the dream, which is ego.
Okay, he
Yes,
mentioned
sir.
ego there just a second ago. Thanks, Sri Ram. And you said just an hour ago, Michael, that, and you say it a lot, ego is nothing but the false awareness of this body. To me, that means everything is ego except for self. Isn't that correct?
Bhagavan says exactly the same in verse 26 of Ulladu Napadu.
Okay,
If
so when I'm
ego comes
Atma-
into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything.
So when I go into Atma-vichara, if I do it with a pure heart and pure intention, I go beyond ego. Ego disappears because I'm focused on self only.
To the extent to which you attend to yourself, to that extent ego subsides. And if you attend to yourself keenly enough, ego will dissolve completely into your being, and your being alone will remain.
That's a pretty encouraging signal to people, I think. And you do say it in the past, but I don't hear it said, and I don't read about it that often. But thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
This is from Jacques. What part does the intellect, buddhi, actually play in our lives? It seems to me that it is either prarabdha or will that is running the boat here, or both simultaneously. In other words, what part does intellect play when it is our vasanas, the active part of our will, that come into play? Michael.
That is, the vasanas are inclinations. Whose inclinations are they? They are ego's inclination. Prarabdha is what is experienced. Who is experiencing it? Ego is experiencing it. So it's actually the whole show is being sustained by ego. Ego is acting under the sway of its vasanas. But the vasanas are not ego, but the vasanas have no existence independent of ego. It's ego's own likes, dislikes, desires, and attachments. In their seed form, these are called vasanas. So it's our desires, our hopes, our fears, our attachments, and so on, that are driving us to act. That is, or we act under the sway of these desires, these vasanas. And as a result of that, the result of our actions is what is called fruit. The fruit gets stored in sanchita, and that is allotted to us for each life. A selection of the fruit from sanchita is allotted as prarabdha. But the root of everything is ego. So what is the role of intellect? Intellect is a tool. intellect is we use intellect to it's that mental faculty of judging, distinguishing, reasoning, and so on. So it's a set of functions. So the buddhi is a set of functions used by ego. The buddhi is what is called the vijnana-maya kosha. The will is what is called the ananda-maya kosha. The ananda-maya kosha is also called the karana sarira, the causal body. Why it is called so? Because that is the, of course, the ego is the root, but it's from the vasanas it's the vasanas that expand as all the other four sheaves, as the jnana-maya kosha, the mana-maya kosha, the prana-maya kosha, and the anamaya kosha. The jnana-maya kosha means the buddhi or intellect. Mana-maya kosha is all the grosser functions of the mind, because the intellect is subtler than than other functions of the mind. The pranamaya kosha is the life, the vitality, all the physiological processes that distinguish a living body from a dead body. And the anamaya kosha is the physical form of the body. These are called the five sheaths. The subtlest of these five sheaths is the anandamaya kosha, which consists of the vasanas. The vasanas, the subtler is more powerful. So it's the ego is the subtlest of all. Ego is not any of the five sheaths. Ego is that which identifies all the five sheaths as I. So ego is the subtlest. So ego is the ultimate driving force. The next subtlest is the vasanas. So vasanas are what influence. That is, the intellect is influenced by the vasanas. The mind is influenced by the vasanas. Everything is ultimately, it's all just an expansion of our vasanas. So the fact that the intellect is ruled by the will, this can be very, very clearly seen in that. Take, for example, philosophy. There's so many brilliant philosophers. Why do no two philosophers ever agree? Can we say one philosopher is more intelligent than another philosopher? So the more intelligent philosopher, the less intelligent philosophers come to different conclusions than the more intelligent philosophers? No, it's nothing to do with intelligence. If they're real philosophers, they're all intelligent. They're all smart people. But why do they come to such wildly different conclusions? Because of the will. We believe what we want to believe. And we use our intellect to justify what we want to believe. That doesn't mean that intellect is powerless. Sometimes, if we are wise, we will use our intellect to judge what we should believe, what we should not believe. And so sometimes we may come to a conclusion, though I would like to believe this, my judgment tells me that is not correct. And so we can sometimes use our intellect to guide our will. But as a general rule, it's the will that is driving the intellect, because the will is more powerful.
Yeah, well, that was my understanding.
So, your question is, what part does the intellect actually play in our life? The intellect is essential, even for worldly things. We are constantly using the intellect, and they used to say that what distinguishes humans from other animals is their intelligence. Does that mean that other animals are not intelligent? We can see, but if you observe the behavior of animals, they've all got intellect. They're all using their judgment. They use their intellect for what they require it. We have extended the use of the intellect not only for the survival, not only for our survival. We use our intellect to speculate about what is beyond death, and so many things. I mean, we extend the use of our intellect more than most other animals. But we're all I mean, we all have intellect. We're all using intellect. Intellect is a vital tool. Because
But I
how do we
guess
distinguish truth from falsehood? How do we distinguish what is edible from what is inedible? How do we distinguish one thing from another? It's all the intellect is playing a role there. So intellect is a vital, I mean, it's an essential instrument.
But going back to what you just said earlier, and that was the crux of my question, it seems that when we don't even have to say under the sway of our vasanas, because basically we just go from one vasa to the next, as Bhagavan says there in Uladu Narpadu. But it seems that each vasana is basically a bubble or a stream of one sort or another, and then the intellect just is tributary to that. It just follows, and
Yes, yes,
when you
but
look at it after having experienced something, you notice your intellects were just going along with whatever the vasanas was
yes,
following the will, basically.
yes. I mean, the will is more powerful than the intellect. But if we use our intellect wisely, we can try to we can use our intellect to curb our vasanas. Like, for example, we read Bhagavan's teachings. Bhagavan tells us there's no happiness in external objects. Happiness is our real nature. We read that and we understand. So it's with our intellect that we understand that. And because we understand that, we recognize we still have very strong vasanas driving us to go outwards. But we need to curb those vasanas. Curb, actually, it's not the vasanas we curb our self being swayed by those vasanas. So when many vasanas are rising in our mind, we have different inclinations. Often our inclinations are pulling us in different directions. We can use our intellect to judge which vasana should I allow myself to be swayed by. So if we are wise, we will use our intellect to keep our vasanas in check.
Thank you, Michael.
But of course, we must have a liking to do so. Many of us don't even have a liking to keep our vasanas in check. So we just allow ourselves to be carried away by them.
Mm.
It's only when we come to the spiritual path that we begin to understand that these vasanas are actually our enemy. That is, our likes and dislikes are not giving us happiness. They're creating all these problems. All our unhappiness is caused ultimately by our desires. Well, ultimately by ego, who has the desires, but the desires are, it's because of our desires that we are facing all these difficulties.
Thank you. I had another question, but I'll let somebody else speak if they have any other question. Well, if nobody else does, it's another topic, but one that keeps coming back on your Patagon series on YouTube, and the question of faith and prayer. And I was just wondering, this is obviously from another tradition, but there's maybe a lot of people will be aware of the example of two Texas children who were gunned down while praying. And it almost seems ironical in the sense that is it just a case of praying for anything else than Atma-swarupa? In other words, because they're not praying without looking for the external fruits in the exterior world, that their prayer is ineffective? Or what I'm getting at is I guess I'm very skeptical of prayer as such, and not that I haven't done it in the past, but today it seems almost like a duality to me. So I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, prayer. If we are praying for anything external, we pray to be. We may have a cancer diagnosis, so we pray to to be safe, to recover from the cancer, or a close friend or relative may have a cancer diagnosis. We pray for their recovery. That type of prayer, it's not going to change anything, because what is going to happen, it's already destined. Once when Bhagavan was asked about whether such prayers are good, whether such prayers are beneficial, Bhagavan said, it's beneficial for the one who is praying. Because at least when we're praying, our mind is direct. Bhagavan didn't explain this, but I think what we can infer from that is, at least when we are praying, our mind is directed towards God. So we are not depending on ourselves, we are depending on that higher power. So to that extent, it's beneficial. That doesn't mean your prayers are going to be answered. If you pray for something that is not in your destiny, it's not going to happen. However, destiny is tailor-made. The destiny that we each experience in this life is tailor-made for our spiritual needs. So God often arranges the prarabdha in such a way that it will seem to us that we prayed for something and God granted our prayers. That increases our faith in God, increases our faith in prayer. And so we slowly, though it's still kamya bhakti, it's bhakti. God is not we are devoted to God not for, God is a means, not the end. We are devoted to God for what we can get from God rather than for God himself. But that's a necessary stage to go through. Because if we go through that stage, eventually we come to a point where our devotion to, because God is fulfilling our prayers, our devotion to him increases, and then our mind is gradually matured and purified, and this kamya bhakti evolves into nishkamya bhakti. We love God for his own sake, not for what we can get from him. So this is all this play of karma and the allotment of fruit. This is all going on. That's why it's all, as Bhagavan said, it's all the fruit of karma is karma giving fruit is according to the ordainment of God. That is, it's God who allots what fruit we are to experience when we're to experience it. That's what he says in the first verse of Upadeshundya. So all this is, it all has a purpose. So prayer has a purpose in this. But once we come to the spiritual path, we should understand that the only thing worth praying for is for the love to turn within and to subside back in the heart, the love to surrender ourselves completely. That is what Bhagavan is praying for in so many different ways in Arunachala, Aksharamlai, Pancharatnam, not Patikam particularly. They're the two with the most prayers, and also in Arunachala Navamanimlai, a little bit in Panchakam. In Ashtakam, there's just one prayer, one verse ends with a prayer. Shine in my heart as the only one. Bhagavan is showing us in these works what we should be praying for. Praying for spiritual benefit, praying for the love to turn within, or whatever it is, and anything. These prayers will bear fruit because we are attuning our will to the will of God. What God wants for us is to turn within and to subside back in the heart, because he knows that alone is what will make us happy. So when we pray for that love to turn within, we are attuning our will to his will. So that will definitely, those are really useful prayers.
Okay, that's sort of, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Doug. Thank you very much. And I have a follow-up to this. It's been a very important revelation to me. I'm not sure if I got it right or not. I'd phrase it this way. About the subject of prayer, which, like many people, I've spent decades involved with, about this subject on prayer, since we're on this path, this Ramana path, as we focus on self-inquiry, my question would be, to whom exactly do we pray? When we're in self-inquiry, we're focused on the self. Guess who the self is? It's the prayer, the person praying. Do I not have that right?
No, the one who is praying is not what we actually are. It's as ego that we are praying.
Right, I know
So
that. But
what
once
we are,
get to
the God we are praying to is the reality of ourselves, what we actually are.
But once we exit that state of ego by focusing from the heart intently on self,
Yes.
why would prayer be necessary at that point? Since you are,
If the in Maharshi's gospel, there's a dialogue where someone asked, one of the questions someone asked Bhagavan, if we surrender, then is no prayer necessary? Bhagavan's answer is surrender itself is a mighty prayer.
yeah, I see that.
So the same applies to self-investigation. The best way to pray for the love to be self-attentive is to attend to ourselves, because action speaks louder than words. We can go on saying to God, give me the love to attend to myself, but if we're continuing to rush out enthusiastically, we're allowing our mind to rush out enthusiastically, our words aren't going to have much effect, because they're not sincere. If we sincerely want to have love to attend to ourselves, we will try to attend to ourselves. So trying to attend to ourselves is itself a mighty prayer.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. And I remind myself, as much as I try to believe and incorporate into my life, to whom is it that we're praying? And I come up with the answer, we're talking to self. I remind myself that in personal crises within my extended family, and all of us have these experiences, I find myself going back to prayer nonetheless.
Yeah, it's natural. It's natural. I mean, it's human nature.
Yeah, yeah.
Even people who profess to be atheists, they pray.
Exactly.
They may not call it prayer, but if one of their near and dear ones are seriously ill, they'll be hoping against hope that they recover.
Yeah.
That hope is the prayer. They may not call it a prayer, but it is a prayer.
What's the old cliche? There are no atheists in foxholes. Yeah, I think that clicks in to our animal nature after a while.
It is.
Yeah.
Michael, I've heard that you have mentioned this before, that devotees used to pray to Bhagavan's photo when Bhagavan was still alive. And Bhagavan, the devotee said, I saw you in the picture as if it was real. And they then reported to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan said, of course, why do you think it was unreal? That's number one.
No, but what Bhagavan said, why do you think it's just a photo?
Right. So when he was praying to Bhagavan's photo, I mean, my own example, I do that. I use Bhagavan's photo for meditation.
Yes.
And Arunachala. So
yes.
That would be the closest.
We're not praying to a piece of paper with a shadow image on it. Right. We're praying that paper is a representation of Bhagavan. So just like we pray to an external, we go to a temple and pray to a linga or a murti of Krishna or whatever.
Right.
We're not limiting God in that form, but that is a representation. That's what linga means. It's a mark. It's a sign. It's a representation.
Right.
Of that which is beyond all representation.
Yes, I've heard in literature, spiritual literature, that prayer can change your prarabdha, because we don't know what our prarabdha is. So is that just a hypothetical question, or if Bhagavan is giving us the prarabdha, some chosen karmas, why can't prayer to Bhagavan change your prarabdha for better?
Okay. Prayer cannot change the prarabdha.
Okay.
Bhagavan can change the prarabdha, because Bhagavan is the one who allotted the prarabdha, so he can change, but generally God will not change the prarabdha, because why? if we think that God is going to change our prarabdha, we are assuming that God made a mistake in what he allotted at first. And if we think our prayer is going to make him, we are saying that I'm wiser than God. I have to tell God what he should have allotted for me. So all this it's all based on our ignorance. Let's accept the our prarabdha is the sweet will of Bhagavan. We should be willing to accept it. We shouldn't ask him to change our prarabdha.
So the only thing worth asking is deepening of love for
Yes,
spiritual attention, and
exactly,
then
exactly.
the Bhagavan would grant you with grace, his grace.
Yes,
Bhagavan is that
yeah,
that grace, power of grace that you thought, Anukampa Chakti. You
yeah,
mentioned about the 5 Shaktis of the self.
yes,
So that's a legitimate use of prayer.
yes, yes. But there may be times in our life where we are faced with particular difficulties or a particularly painful situation. A very dear one is seriously ill. We may find a prayer welling up in our heart to Bhagavan. There's no wrong with that, but that is that's just a normal human reaction. But that is not. That's not what the prayer should really be. That's not what we should really be praying for. Because of our human weakness, we sometimes pray for. We may find ourselves sometimes praying for external things. But what we should really be praying for, the really useful prayer, is the praying for the love to turn within.
Very good.
Which is
Thank
what Bhagavan
you
has
for
prayed
that.
for in so many different ways in Akramla and so on.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you for that. And in our last 2 minutes, I try to tailor make some of these questions that can be answered in a minute. I'll give my try at this one. You said not so long ago when you were talking to Jacques that we are wise to keep our vasanas in check. Maybe I'm interpreting that the wrong way. As they come up, as we recognize them, we learn to recognize them and process them as they come up. Are these vasanas not going away? You say to keep them in check, meaning address them.
When I say keep them in check, keep ourselves in check. We need to. Vasanas have no power of their own. The power they seem to have is the power that we've invested in them.
Yeah.
So the problem is not the vasanas. The problem is us being swayed by our vasanas. So it's we have to keep ourselves in check. We have to refrain from being swayed by the vasanas.
That's a great answer.
That's a
Thank
more
you.
precise way of putting it.
As we are being swayed by vasanas, it's our choice that we allow that to happen. So that's another way of looking at it too.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, you only have that choice if you understand what and where vasanas come from as you teach.
Well, even if we don't, we're all making choices. That is,
Yeah.
even a worldly person, they have multiple. I mean, we all have multiple multiple inclinations, and we're constantly choosing whether to be swayed by this inclination or that inclination.
Well, I want to thank you. Our time is up now, and the questions were excellent today. Thank the people who sent them in, and I want to remind everybody that Michael's going to be back here the first Sunday of October, and I really appreciate your lessons. And this is a sampling of what goes on when we're here for 2 hours, as it does everywhere I'm sure you speak. We started with 33 people, and one person had to leave. We're down to 32 people. They like me eat up all of this, and I'm for one grateful of the way you can go through a comment and come up with an answer and explain the answer using different words and re-explain it yet again. I profit from that style of yours, and
Yeah,
I'm sure.
but it's all coming from Bhagavan. I mean, I have no qualification to answer any question or anything. It's because by Bhagavan's grace I've been attracted to his teachings, and because of my love for his teachings, I've immersed myself in them to the extent possible. And that I just see when questions are presented, I just see the answers are there in Bhagavan's teaching. So I'm just pointing out what is either explicit or implicit in Bhagavan's own words.
Wow. And as I referenced before, some of the new people here, I don't mean new to our Sunday morning program, but new to Ramana, new to non-duality. Who am I? Self-inquiry. It's a big, big help because they come back every month too, meaning they're getting it. You're talking at levels for all of us to appreciate. Michael, thanks again. We'll see you in October, and I hope others of the 32 remaining join me to thank you and wish you well.
All thanks to Bhagavan.